Have you ever brushed off a strange headache, a moment of dizziness, or even a sudden wave of exhaustion and told yourself it's probably nothing? What if I told you those little nothings could be your brain's desperate cry for help? Here's the terrifying truth: in the United States, someone suffers a stroke every 40 seconds, and yet nearly half of those people had clear warning signs in the days and weeks before, but they ignored them. That's the danger. Strokes rarely strike out of nowhere. Your body is smarter than you think. It whispers, it signals, it pleads with you to pay attention long before the catastrophe hits. And missing those signals can mean the difference between full recovery and permanent disability, between life and death. But here's the hope. In today's video, Dr. Mark Ellis, will guide you through 9 powerful early warning signs that your body may be sending weeks before a stroke. These aren't vague feelings or random symptoms. They are scientifically documented red flags backed by decades of medical research. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to recognize them, what they mean, and when to act. And here's why you need to stay with me until the very end. Some of these warning signs are so subtle, so easy to dismiss, that they could slip right past you unless you know what to look for. So lean in, because the next few minutes could save your life or the life of someone you love. And before we dive in, let me ask you, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below. We love seeing our global health community come together, because knowledge shared is lives saved. Now let's begin with the very first sign, one that often hides in plain sight, disguised as a headache you'll never forget. Let's begin with one of the most chilling but least understood warnings: the Sentinel headache. Imagine this: Robert, a 59-year-old accountant from Ohio, wakes up with a headache so intense, so alien, that no painkiller in his cabinet touches it. He tells himself it's just stress from tax season, but deep down he knows something feels different. This isn't the typical tension headache after a long day, nor the predictable pattern of a migraine. This one is new, sharp, unrelenting, and it refuses to go away. Doctors call it the Sentinel headache because it acts like a guard at the gate, warning that something dangerous is about to enter. And science backs this up. A study published in the Journal of Headache and Pain examined over 500 stroke patients and found that nearly 15% reported this unusual type of headache within just a week before their stroke. That's not coincidence. That's your brain begging you to listen. Unlike ordinary headaches that fade, these headaches tend to arrive, suddenly grow stronger, and linger day after day, because blood flow to critical parts of the brain is already being disrupted. Here's the problem. Most people dismiss it. They blame fatigue, dehydration, maybe even the weather. But ignoring a sentinel headache can mean missing your only early shot at preventing disaster. If you ever feel a headache that is unlike anything you've had before, severe, strange, and persistent, don't wait it out. This is the moment to seek help, because it could literally save your life. But only knowing this first sign isn't enough, because sometimes your brain doesn't just warn you with pain, it stages a terrifying rehearsal of the main event itself. And that's where the next warning sign comes in. Now, if a sentinel headache is your brain's alarm bell, a transient ischemic attack, or TIA, is nothing less than a dress rehearsal for disaster. Picture this: Mary, a 64-year-old grandmother, is making breakfast when suddenly her right arm feels heavy. Her speech slurs and her face droops slightly in the mirror. Her daughter panics, but within 20 minutes, everything returns to normal. Mary brushes it off as just getting older. But what she didn't realize is that her brain had just given her a terrifying preview of what a full-blown stroke looks like. That's exactly what a TIA is: a mini stroke caused by a temporary blockage of blood flow to the brain. It creates the same symptoms as a major stroke: drooping face, weak arm, slurred speech, but then clears up when the clot dissolves or blood flow returns. And here's the frightening truth: the American Heart Association reports that up to 43% of people who suffer a full ischemic stroke experienced a TIA in the week before. In other words, nearly half of strokes come with a warning shot, and far too many people ignore it. Why is this so dangerous? Because the temporary nature of TIAs tricks people into thinking the danger's over. But in reality, it's your brain shouting, "Next time I may not let you recover." Recognizing and treating a TIA immediately can mean the difference between walking away unharmed or being permanently disabled. If you or someone you love ever experience sudden weakness, numbness, or slurred speech that fades quickly, don't wait. Call emergency services. That temporary scare might be your only chance to stop a real stroke before it strikes. But only knowing this second sign still isn't enough, because sometimes your brain whispers instead of shouts. It doesn't knock you down, it just makes the room spin and your balance vanish. And that's where the next warning sign becomes dangerously easy to dismiss. If TIAs are the terrifying rehearsal, dizziness, and sudden balance problems are the subtle whispers that many people laugh off until it's too late. Imagine John, a 61-year-old retired teacher, stepping out of bed one morning, only to feel as if the entire room is spinning. He stumbles into the wall, grabs the dresser for support, and tells his wife, maybe it's just vertigo. But what John didn't know was that his brain's balance centers were already starving for oxygen. The truth is, dizziness and balance issues can be far more than inner ear trouble or just getting older. Studies from the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute reveal that persistent or unexplained dizziness is a recognized prodromal symptom, often appearing days or even weeks before a stroke. Why? Because the areas of your brain responsible for spatial orientation and coordination are extremely sensitive to even the smallest changes in blood flow. When arteries begin to narrow or clot, these areas react first by making the world tilt beneath your feet. Here's where it gets dangerous. People often ignore these episodes, blaming medications, side effects, fatigue, or dehydration. But if dizziness comes out of nowhere, keeps recurring, or is paired with headaches, vision changes, or weakness, it's time to take it seriously. This is your brain warning you that the foundation beneath your life is starting to shake. Ignoring it could mean losing not just your balance, but your independence. But only knowing this third sign isn't enough, because the brain doesn't stop at stealing your balance. Sometimes it literally clouds the way you see the world, blurring, doubling, or even snatching away your vision in an instant. And that's where the next warning sign becomes impossible to overlook. If losing your balance makes the world spin, imagine what happens when your very eyesight turns against you. Sarah, a 66-year-old grandmother, was driving to the grocery store when the words on the road sign suddenly blurred. For a terrifying moment, the cars in front of her seemed doubled, as if she were looking through a cracked mirror. Minutes later, her vision returned, and she told herself it must have been eye strain. But Sarah's brain wasn't tired, it was in trouble. Visual disturbances like blurred vision, double vision, flashing lights, or sudden blind spots are not always about aging eyes or needing new glasses. They can be powerful early signs that blood flow to the brain's occipital lobe. The part that processes vision is being compromised. Medical journals have documented that these symptoms often appear in the days or weeks leading up to a stroke. What makes them so dangerous is their unpredictability. They come and go, tricking people into thinking the problem is minor. Science shows that when the arteries feeding the visual centers become narrowed or blocked, even briefly, the brain struggles to interpret the images your eyes are sending. That's why the world looks distorted or fades altogether. If you experience sudden or repeated vision changes, especially paired with dizziness or headaches, don't write it off as fatigue. This is your body waving a red flag that can't be ignored. But only knowing this fourth sign isn't enough, because your brain doesn't just control how you see the world, it controls how you speak it into existence. And when your words begin to twist, slow down, or vanish altogether, that's when the next warning sign turns from strange to deeply alarming. If blurred vision steals how you see the world, speech difficulties steal how you express it. Take David, a 57-year-old salesman who suddenly found himself struggling during a routine phone call. His words came out slurred, slow, almost as if his tongue didn't belong to him. A few minutes later, his speech returned to normal. He laughed it off, saying he was tired, but what really happened was that his brain's language centers were under attack. Speech problems are one of the most critical early red flags for stroke. They can appear as slurred speech, jumbled words, or even trouble understanding what others are saying. Research published in peer-reviewed neurological journals confirms that speech disturbances like dysarthria often appear days or weeks before a full stroke strikes. Why? Because the brain regions responsible for language, Broca's area and Wernicke's area, are highly sensitive to interruptions in blood flow. Even a brief restriction can cause your words to twist or vanish. What makes this symptom so dangerous is its subtlety. You might only notice a slight slur, a missed word, or someone asking you to repeat yourself more often than usual. Friends and family may assume you're distracted or tired, but the truth is far more serious. If your speech suddenly changes without explanation, even if it clears up quickly, It is not a mistake to call it a medical emergency. It could be the warning that saves your ability to speak or even your life. But only knowing this fifth sign isn't enough, because strokes don't just play with your words, they can strip away your strength. And when weakness or numbness creeps into just one side of your body, the danger rises to a whole new level. If speech difficulties twist your words, weakness or numbness on one side of the body threatens to take away your independence altogether. Imagine Linda, a 63-year-old nurse, reaching for her morning coffee only to realize her left hand won't grip the mug the way it used to. Later that day, she notices her left cheek feels oddly heavy, almost numb. She blames it on sleeping in a strange position, but in reality, her motor cortex was already starving for blood. This one-sided weakness, known as hemiparesis, is one of the most well-documented early warnings of stroke. Studies show that many patients report subtle weakness or tingling in an arm, leg, or face in the days or weeks before their event. These sensations happen because the brain's motor and sensory regions, which control movement and touch, become compromised when blood flow is reduced. At first, it might feel like a heavy leg when climbing stairs or a weaker grip when turning a doorknob. But these tiny changes are not random. They are your brain's way of signaling that its control over your body is slipping. The danger is that most people shrug these signs off as aging fatigue or minor muscle strain. But the pattern is the giveaway. If numbness or weakness keeps affecting the same side of your body, it's not coincidence, it's neurology. And catching it early could mean stopping a stroke before it locks you into permanent disability. But only knowing this sixth sign isn't enough, because sometimes the brain doesn't just weaken your body, it drains your energy completely, leaving you exhausted in a way that no amount of rest can fix. And that's where the next warning sign becomes dangerously deceptive. If weakness takes away your strength, fatigue quietly steals your spirit. Meet George, a 68-year-old retired carpenter. For weeks, he felt a crushing exhaustion that no nap, no coffee, and no night of sleep could fix. He would sit on his porch, staring at his unfinished woodworking projects, and wonder why simple tasks suddenly felt like climbing a mountain. His wife thought it was stress, maybe even mild depression, but George's brain was already running on empty. This isn't ordinary tiredness. Research published in leading neurological journals shows that persistent, unexplained fatigue can appear in the days or weeks before a stroke. Why? Because your brain consumes nearly 20% of your body's energy, and when blood flow is compromised, it shifts into survival mode. That's when you feel drained, foggy, unable to focus, and strangely unmotivated no matter how much rest you get. Stroke survivors often recall this unusual exhaustion as one of the earliest warning signs they ignored, confusing it for aging, stress, or seasonal changes. What makes this symptom so dangerous is that it doesn't look dramatic. You won't collapse or lose your words. Instead, your brain is quietly rationing its energy, conserving what little it has left, and sending you a subtle but urgent plea for help. If you ever find yourself weighed down by a deep, unexplained fatigue that worsens despite rest, take it seriously. It could be your body's last chance to stop what's coming next. But only knowing the seventh sign isn't enough, because sometimes the brain doesn't just make you feel tired, it can actually take away your hearing in an instant. And that sudden silence is a warning most people never expect. If fatigue feels like your body running out of fuel, sudden hearing loss is like someone cutting the wires to your world without warning. Picture Angela, a 62-year-old choir singer. One morning she woke up and realized her right ear was strangely silent. The night before she had been practicing her favorite hymn, but now half the music was gone. Within hours, she also felt a wave of dizziness. She assumed it was an ear infection, but the truth was much more alarming. Her brain's blood supply was already in jeopardy. This condition, called sudden sensorineural hearing loss, isn't the gradual decline many people expect with age. It strikes fast, usually in one ear, and often comes with vertigo or balance issues. According to research published in PubMed Central, SSNHL has been identified as a prodromal warning sign of ischemic stroke, particularly in the posterior circulation that feeds the brainstem and cerebellum. These regions share the same fragile arteries that also supply the inner ear. When those arteries falter, hearing can vanish like a light switched off. The danger lies in dismissal. Most people chalk it up to wax sinus problems or minor infection. But when sudden hearing loss occurs alongside dizziness or in someone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or vascular disease, it's a red alert that cannot be ignored. Early evaluation could mean preventing a catastrophic stroke. But only knowing this eighth sign isn't enough because strokes don't always follow a script. Sometimes they appear in strange, unexpected ways, confusion seizures, nausea, even brief blackouts. And that's when the final warning sign reveals just how unpredictable and deadly a stroke can be. If sudden hearing loss feels like silence stealing your world, the final warning sign is even more unsettling because it doesn't play by the rules. Strokes can announce themselves through atypical neurological symptoms that seem random, unrelated, and easy to dismiss. Take Paul, a 70-year-old retired engineer. One evening while talking with his grandson, he suddenly couldn't follow the conversation. It was as if the words were in a foreign language. The next day he experienced sudden nausea and nearly blacked out. Within a week, Paul suffered a full stroke. Those strange little episodes were actually his brain-waving red flags. These atypical signs can include sudden confusion, brief seizures, unexplained nausea, or vomiting, temporary loss of consciousness, or abnormal tingling in different parts of the body. According to the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, these prodromal symptoms may appear hours to weeks before a stroke. What makes them so dangerous is their unpredictability. One day it's confusion, another day it's dizziness, the next it might be numbness in a finger. Alone they seem harmless. Together they paint a picture of vascular instability. The mistake most people make is writing them off as stress fatigue or just getting older. But when these unusual symptoms occur in clusters or repeat without clear explanation, especially if you have risk factors like high blood pressure or diabetes, it's time to take them seriously. Early medical attention could mean stopping a catastrophic event before it unfolds. But only knowing these 9 signs isn't enough because awareness without action changes nothing. What you do next, how fast you recognize, respond, and react can decide whether a stroke ends in tragedy or in triumph. And that's why the conclusion of this video is the most important part you cannot afford to miss. You've now learned the hidden signs your body may be sending long before a serious health crisis strikes. And that knowledge alone already puts you steps ahead in protecting yourself and your loved ones. Remember, small changes in awareness can make the biggest difference in outcomes. If this video was valuable, be sure to save it so you can revisit these life-saving reminders anytime, and subscribe to our channel for the latest medical insights and trusted guidance on keeping your kidneys and your overall health strong. Because here's the truth, your future is not defined by disease, but by the choices you make today. With the right knowledge, action, and care, you can live healthier, longer, and with hope for many more vibrant years ahead.